Hello, everybody. I'm Mark Barnes. I work with the North Carolina History Center on the Civil War, Emancipation, and Reconstruction. Welcome everyone here to the Center's 6th commemoration of Juneteenth, a federal holiday observing the emancipation of the enslaved during the Civil War, and the 5th in memory of the late Harry Jones. Jones was a prominent African-American historian who was the assistant director and curator at the African-American Civil War Freedom Foundation and Museum in Washington, D.C. His area of expertise centered on the contribution of blacks during the Civil War. He was first heard by organizers of the center as they visited Washington to do research on museums. His speech blew them away. He became a close advisor to the center and spoke several times here in Fayetteville. In June 2018, Jones last spoke to Fayetteville about Juneteenth over here at Fayetteville State University. Several days later, Harry Jones died of a sudden heart attack in Washington. The center decided to honor his memory and his contribution to our understanding of the African-American community during the Civil War and afterward, through Reconstruction and the Jim Crow era, by sponsoring the Harry Jones Memorial Lecture Series. Invited speakers to the series have included civil rights activist and retired Guilford College history professor Dr. Adrian Israel, Methodist University history professor Dr. Peter Murray, Dr. Vernon Burton of Clemson, Dr. Spencer Crew, who is Emeritus Director of the National Museum of African American History and Culture, and Dr. Darren J. Waters, Deputy Secretary for the state's Office of Archives and History. All of these people have helped the center in our mission to tell the story. This year, our speaker is Leesa Jones, the co-founder and executive director of the Washington Waterfront Underground Railroad Museum in Washington, North Carolina, and a well-known local historian on the eastern part of the state. Her appearance is in conjunction with the Juneteenth Speakers Bureau of the North Carolina African American Heritage Commission. The commission was created by the North Carolina General Assembly in 2008 and works across the Department of Natural and Cultural Resources to achieve the mission of preserving, protecting, and promoting North Carolina's African American history, art, and culture for all people. I would like to sincerely thank Dr. Waters of the Office of Archives and History, and one of our mentors, as I say, along with the African American Heritage Commission's Executive Director, Adrienne Nearday, and Associate Director, Natalie Rodriguez. All of them helped make tonight possible, as have everyone at the center. I'd like to thank Dorian Caldwell, Kobe Brown, Sherry Moulter, Lisa Greathouse of the center staff, and our leaders, Mac Healy, Mary Lynn, Brian, all of whom helped make tonight possible as well. I see in the audience we have Michael McElreath, who is overseeing our effort in outreach to school teachers across the state, and Dr. James Anderson, retired chancellor at Fayetteville State University, who has also joined us. All of these folks have had a role in this center. I'd like to point out that the center is about teachers, and the center is about storytellers. And tonight we are fortunate to have both. Leesa Jones is a native of Washington. Now, that's the original Washington and not Little Washington. She retired as a teacher after 32 years. She taught in schools in Philadelphia and Burlington, New Jersey. She's known for starting the African American History Tours of Washington in 2009 to help locals and tourists discover 300 years of African American history that had not been previously shared in local historical documents and books. In 2014, with the help of the Phoenix Historical Society of Tarboro, Jones got a 3-mile portion of the Pamlico Tar River designated as a National Park Service Underground Railroad Network to Freedom Site. In 2016, she co-founded The Washington Waterfront Underground Railroad Museum, which was awarded a designation as a National Park Service Underground Railroad Network to Freedom facility. In 2017, with the assistance from the Phoenix Historical Society, she helped secure Beaufort County's first North Carolina Highway Commission historical marker to honor an African American subject. In 2021, she helped Washington get its first Pomeroy history marker that celebrates an African American man named Hull Anderson, who was born enslaved in 1784 and became very wealthy in Washington by 1826. I'd like at this time to call Leesa. Welcome. Milt, welcome. I forgot to mention Milt. Milt is her assistant.
He's also my boo, my hubby.
Pardon me. Thank you.
Praise the Lord. Thank you so much for coming out this evening. We are absolutely delighted to be here this evening and to be a part of the Harry Jones legacy. Tonight we wanted, first of all, to share with you all just how good God has been to all people, but especially to freedom seeking. We had started the Washington Waterfront Museum in 2016. It is the only museum in North Carolina solely dedicated to the telling of the story of emancipation, self-emancipation, freedom seeking from the 147 places that were in 147 plantations that were in the greater Washington area. And we share the brilliance and creativity of enslaved people to be able to self-emancipate. There's so much history to be learned. And unfortunately, a lot of history has been treated like a pancake on a plate. And if you have a pancake on a plate and you're looking at it, you only see one side. You have to pick that pancake up to be able to see both sides. And what we try to share is both sides of history. We all know slavery for any group of people is a horrible situation. But we wanted to just highlight on how enslaved people in the greater Washington area was able, first of all, with their faith in God, who would deliver them, even like the book of Hebrews said, even if they didn't get the deliverance they wanted, they believed in a God who could deliver them. But the resolute attitude they had about freedom, what they would do to accomplish getting their freedom, has totally just blown us away. So in 2016, we, with a friend, started the Washington Waterfront Africa. See what happens when you only have one pot of coffee in the day instead of two? We started the Washington Waterfront Underground Railroad Museum to be able to tell those stories. You will often hear that freedom seekers were able to get on a ship and often be able to get their freedom to places of safety or semi-safety, especially in places like the North. But I can guarantee you they just didn't walk up and go, "Hey, yo, can I get on your ship?" It would take up to 15 people doing their own individual thing to help Milton and I get to freedom. Abolitionists were white, they were black, they were Native American, they were Latino, Mexican, Jewish, German, French, people from all walks of life who lived in Washington and believed it was not God's will for anyone to be enslaved. They did what they could do to help enslaved people get to their freedom. So those are the stories that we share at the Washington Waterfront. Whenever you hear Underground Railroad, please, in its simplest terms, think of it like this: people helping people. So tonight we just wanted to give you a little snippet of how enslaved people were able to use their creativity, how they got off of plantations, how abolitionists got on plantations. Plantations were closed communities. You just didn't stroll up on a plantation, "Well, we here to free some slaves today, where they at?" No, it didn't happen like that. But again, it took months and months of planning to be able to help enslaved people get off the plantation, to get on a plantation, to be able to give them information about freedom seeking. So tonight we just brought a few of our objects to be able to take talk about, and we hope that you'll take a look at them because some of them are just the most simplest things that enslaved people used to get their freedom. Now, we specifically talk about the plantations in Washington. We specifically point out one plantation, Elmwood Plantation. That plantation is about 3 blocks from our museum. It is right on the Pamlico River. I grew up on 4th Street. Elmwood Plantation was on 1st Street or Main Street. The slave houses to Elmwood Plantation was on 2nd Street. And so after emancipation, a lot of people still stayed in those houses. They raised families, and my grandparents actually knew a lot of formerly enslaved people. So as a child, I sat on the porch. Now, y'all modern parents call it time out, but my mama called it get up on this porch so you know how to act. So I spent a lot of time sitting on the porch listening to my grandmother and her friends. They're telling these stories. And because my friends are out riding their bikes and skating, I got to make it look like I am just so engrossed in these stories and just having the time of my life listening. I'm so glad I did. I am so glad, and I wish I could get one day to go back and just listen to those stories. They could tell stories like, I remember sitting on the porch one time, and they were telling this story about Mahala. And they said, well, you know, Mahala came through the ocean wave. And I'm just thinking, it was a person just swimming through the water and never thought that much about it. And then they said, well, you know, Khalil came through the snow. You'll never be a bigger snow lover than me, so I just think somebody's walking through the snow. And then they said, well, Sudia was virgin born. Now that one got my attention, because I only knew one person that was virgin born, and Sudia wasn't it. So I'm just thinking they're telling these stories, and they're just, it's almost like one story got bigger, and the next story had to get bigger, but I'm so glad I listened. So when they said that Khalil came through the ocean wave, John Gray Blunt, he was one of the founders of Washington. He was a companion to Daniel Boone, good friend of Daniel Boone. And at one point, he owned just about all the real estate that could be obtained in the United States. Remember that name, John Gray Blunt, founder of Washington. Well, he owned a slave market right there on the Washington waterfront, and it was called the Ocean Wave. And so when they said someone came through the Ocean Wave, they were telling us they were sold at John Gray Blunt's slave market. And if they said Mahala came through the snow, we have many, many documents. We have thousands of documents at the museum. Some of them go back to 1754. And some of them talk about slave ships. And whenever we could find the word snow in front of a ship, like the Snow Mary, the Snow Molly, the Snow John, it usually referred to a slave ship. So when they said that someone came through the snow, they were talking about a particular ship that brought them into the port of Washington. And when they were talking about Sudia was virgin born, that's the one I thought they made up, Mark. I really thought, Pastor, I thought they made that one up. What they meant was, well, let me tell you this first. Can you hold this up for me? We are a part of the Africa to Carolina project. And through this initiative, we are able to identify slave ships that were coming directly into the port of Bath. Now, when I say the port of Bath, I don't mean the town of Bath. The port of Bath at that time encompassed about 5 or 6 counties: Beaufort County, Craven County, Carteret County, Hyde County, Pamlico County, and I think there's one more. So the port of Bath was huge. But Washington was a part of the port of Bath, and we've been able to identify specifically 2 ships coming into the port of Bath in 1754 and 1755, and one of those ships was the Virgin Katrine. So when they said someone was virgin born, I'm thinking B-O-R-N, born. But they were using the word B-O-R-N-E, meaning to carry. So when they said Sudia was virgin born, they were actually telling us the name of the ship that these people came in on into the Port of Washington. So what we have done for the last 22 years is take these old stories, put the documentation to them so that we can share with you accurately and with documented information what we have learned about freedom seeking in Washington. Now, it is specific to Elmwood Plantation, and 3 miles from Elmwood Plantation, there's another plantation called Cedar Grove. It is now called Washington Park. But we took the information from formerly enslaved people who lived on those plantations. We carefully vetted the information. That's how we got our certification from the National Park Service to be able to designate the Washington Waterfront as a National Park Service Underground Railroad Network to Freedom site. The National Park Service don't want to hear good stories. Every town's got a good story. The National Park Service wants strong, documented, verifiable proof. And we sent them a documentation packet with the help of the Phoenix Historical Society. That documentation was this thick. And they told us it would take them 2 years to go through all that documentation because they wanted to make sure it was carefully vetted and that we had primary, secondary, and tertiary sources to accompany whatever we sent. Our documentation was so strong, we had a certification in 6 months. But again, we heard these old stories. When I would go to the Brown Library in Washington, I could not find any information about my people. It was just very hard to find anything other than they were slaves and they worked on a plantation. And some of the actual documents say they sang all the time and they were happy. Now, I can tell you, a couple of them statements ain't true. So what we did was we decided to take that information and present it in a way that you could understand how freedom-seeking attempts took place, but more importantly, the creativity that enslaved people had to be able to come up with a communication that you would look at or you would hear and you don't even know. If you're not in the loop, you're not a part of it, you would have no idea what was going on. And so the reason I'm even dressed like this tonight is part of communication. Trust me, I don't go to Walmart looking like this. But part of my clothing is communication. Songs and stories, any objects that you're looking at on these tables, they could be used as communication. Songs, we all know. My history books when I was in 7th grade said, slaves worked on the fields, they sang, and they were happy. Yeah, they sang a lot because they were communicating messages. And if you did not know what the method of the message was, it would go right over your head. And so they could sing a song, and you'd see a few enslaved people over here just jubilant because they knew what it meant. And somebody else think, oh, they happy. No, they were planning escapes. So our attempt tonight is just to show you a few of those things. I need to make a disclaimer here. We can't sing, y'all. We thought we would put that out there. I am no Lena Horne, and he is no Luther Vandross. So we thought we would put that out there. But again, we just wanted to illustrate some of the ways enslaved people could get their freedom. Now, to set this up for you, on Elmwood Plantation, about 1828 to 1832, there was a lot of Quaker activity in Washington. The Greensboro, North Carolina, was a stronghold for Quaker activity. They were very much invested in helping freedom-seeking attempts. And from Washington, about 30 or 40 miles, there's a town called Winton, W-I-N-T-O-N. It was the largest Quaker headquarters in the South. And so Washington had a lot of Quakers coming into Washington and doing what they could do to either teach people how to be abolitionists, how to get on plantations. And Milt, can we get one of our favorite people we love to talk about? He's first. Any information that freedom seekers got on a plantation, first of all, it was carefully veiled. But how did they get it? How would they know about what ships were coming into Washington? The Port of Washington was the second largest port in North Carolina. It was the largest shipbuilding port in North Carolina by 1850. And guess who built 99% of those ships? From Washington, you literally could get your freedom anywhere. The Port of Washington at that time, the Pamlico Tar River, they dredged it in years past, so it's not as deep as it used to be. But you could get very seaworthy large vessels into the Port of Washington. And from Washington, if you could get on one of those ships with the help of abolitionists, you could get your freedom in states to the north. And from the north, many people went to Canada, because in the north, you could be caught and sold back into slavery. Into Canada, you had a little more vested interest in being free, because it's just a little bit harder to be sold back into slavery in Canada. From Washington, you could go to Florida. We bought a lot of produce and other things from Florida. Those ships would go to Florida, bringing things back to Washington and going back to Florida. This country's first underground railroad was the state of Florida, specifically places like Bradenton, Sarasota, St. Augustine, Fort Mose. That land had been given by the 13th Edict of Spain, especially if you joined the Catholic Church and pledged allegiance to Spain, you could go to Florida. From Florida, many people went to Mexico, because Mexico had abolished slavery in 1829. And because many merchants in town, they came from other countries, they would have ships built, and they would have those ships taking things back to their countries of origin, like Ireland or Scotland. They take things up to the port of New York, and it would be shipped out from there. From Washington, you could get your freedom in so many places. But however, everybody wasn't trying to get to states in the north and Canada. Maybe they were just going up 20 miles to the Tar River to find out where their families had been sold. And so Washington became, up and down the East Coast, was known as a freedom seeker's haven, because everybody knew the importance of the Port of Washington. During the Civil War, it was a supply chain center. During the Revolutionary War, it was a supply chain center. And so everybody knew about the importance of Washington. And if you could get to Washington, you literally could get your freedom anywhere if you could get on one of those ships. We had free black communities as well. Anybody ever heard of a town called Aurora? They have a tremendous fossil museum. At one point, they were known as the world's largest phosphate mine. Right now, they're known as you got to go to that fossil museum. Even children go there and dig up 10-million-year-old megalodon, too. So it's known for its fossil museum. But up until 1852, that land was owned by all free blacks, all 540 acres. It was named Bettytown. Isaiah Hodge owned all 540 acres. He names it Bettytown after his wife, Betty. That was a free black community you could go to. We have one named Keysville. Free blacks owned that land as early as 1834. We had a lot of free black communities. But as a freedom seeker, you did not want to go amongst the free black communities. First place they're going to look for you. So many people decided to go into the greater rural areas, and especially Keysville. It was known as the shadow of Egypt. You could go there and be totally safe. And so we had places that you could go, but most people preferred the maritime route. It's a little harder to stop a ship in the middle of the river and say, I just want to see who's on this ship. But we did have overland routes as well. And so if you could get on a ship, you could get your freedom anywhere, but you had to have help. If Milton and I are on Elmwood Plantation, how do we know about freedom-seeking attempts? How would we know? Who's going to tell us? Take a guess. They outlawed drums. We were at a Somerset Plantation last weekend, and there was a person there drumming, and they were quickly told that on the Somerset Plantation, as well as many others, they outlawed drums. They were literally called talking drums. These drums, when they were beat in a specific way, could communicate messages. So they got rid of drums real quick. But then people start going. Even in some churches in Washington today, when people are singing, "He's the lily of the valley," they still stomping that out, right? But then that was outlawed. And then they went to tap dancing. Check out the history of tap dancing. But again, messages would be conveyed, but how would we know about freedom-seeking attempts? Somebody's got to get on that plantation and tell us. So what brave person would be willing to do that? Absolutely, but let me tell you about the ministers first. Okay. We found this gentleman here, Mr. Benjamin Lundy, Quaker abolitionist. He was coming to Washington in the years 1828, 1832. Now, when he first started coming to Washington, he wanted to talk to slave owners about emancipating their slaves. That was not going to happen. People paid a lot of money for their enslaved people, and they did not want them emancipated. So one of the things he did, he started hosting meetings at the Methodist Church, and he would teach people how to get on a plantation, because you did not stroll up on a plantation. Excuse me, ma'am, you got any slaves here that I can help today? Sir, you got any? What he did was he went on Elmwood Plantation under the guise of being a peddler. Think Amazon bringing something to your house. Peddlers, they would come to plantations and they could sell you things like anything that you needed for your house. Let's just say a tin cup. And he could sell you a tin cup for 5 cents or 3 cents, and the mercantile stores in Washington or Main Street would sell it to you for 7 or 8 cents. So their products were cheaper because they had no overhead. All he had was a horse and a cart. But he'd come to the plantation with things that you would need for your house or for your livestock, and they could sell it to you. So he goes on Elmwood Plantation, and he's there for a while. And Elmwood Plantation was owned by a man named Mr. James Grice. And so he's on the plantation, and he's talking to Mr. James Grice. He knows it is a cotton plantation because the Quakers in Washington that was helping him filled him in with all the information he would need to know when he got on the plantation. So Mr. Lundy's on that plantation for a couple of days, and he's just general news of the day, what's happening in New York, what's happening in Paris, what's happening in London. And he just happens to mention the dress Marie Antoinette wore. He happened to mention to Mr. Grice that if his women could tatter, meaning make lace, they could make him a lot of money, because Mr. Lundy was sending a lot of his cotton products up to New York to be shipped overseas anyway. And so that if he can make lace, he can make a lot of money. And he goes, by the way, can you say women tatter? And he was told, no, they can knit, they can crochet, they do piecing, making quilts, they make their clothes, they make, what is this tattering thing? He says, well, I can get you some women in here who can tatter. Now he has Mr. Grice's ear. So all he has to go do now is go back to the Methodist Church, talking to some of the people that he's working with, who he's carefully scrutinized and watched for months at a time, and now he's preparing them to get ready to go on the plantation. So y'all don't worry if you can't tatter. Mr. Grice ain't never seen tattering. Whatever you put together is whatever you put together. Now, he did not have a picture of the dress to be able to talk about the dress to Mr. Allen Grice, but I have a picture of the dress. Please Google the dress that launched the slave trade. This is the dress that Marie Antoinette wore. It was the rage of Paris and New York and London, and every fashionable woman wanted a facsimile of this dress. Even women that couldn't afford it wanted the cheapest version of it. But this was the dress that literally launched the slave trade. And he definitely had Mr. Grice's ear, because it's all about money. So we got some of y'all on the plantation. Now we need a few more. And the ministers? Ministers were always welcome on the plantation, always. And even if you didn't know nothing about the Bible, all you got to do is stick to this one scripture. Slaves, obey your masters, for this is right in the sight of the Lord. 1 Timothy 6:1, the Bible I read every day, it does say that. But when Paul wrote it, Paul was writing it to Roman Christians who had just embraced Christianity. And Paul wanted them to understand, if your life as a Roman slave was bad, it's about to get worse, because they're persecuting Christians. And Paul wanted these new Christians to live out the tenets of our Lord Jesus Christ. You know, Jesus would say radical stuff, like if somebody slapped you on your cheek, you turn the other cheek. Y'all tried that this week? What Jesus was saying, you don't have to render evil for evil. Just because somebody's not good or kind to you, you do not have to respond in kind. So Paul wrote it to encourage the new Christians. Life gonna be tough for you as a Christian, but we're gonna act just like Jesus acted. Look how he was treated. That's why Paul wrote it. But slave owners wanted to constantly preach, because then the horse didn't suddenly go lame. Master, we don't know what happened to the horse leg. Farm equipment wouldn't get broke, thrown in the river, lost. Master, I don't know what happened to the plow. Have you seen the plow? I ain't seen the plow. You ain't seen it either, right? And strange substances wouldn't make it into your food. Anybody ever seen the help? So as long as you're preaching that one scripture, now you're on the plantation. And from there, little bit by little bit, and you're going to be on that plantation, I think they said almost a year before you actually start talking to the freedom seeker, because you're being watched and they're being watched. But those are some of the ways that we found that Mr. Benjamin Lundy got on that plantation and started discerning who would be willing to escape. And it took him months and months and months to be able to do that. And again, under the peril of his life. When John Gray Blunt found that he was actually trying to recruit people to be abolitionists, he put a price on his head. They managed to get him out of Washington to New Bern so that he could leave from New Bern literally 10 minutes before John Gray Blunt got his hands on it, because abolitionist work could be very, very dangerous. So at the museum, we tell you about freedom seeking, but we also tell you about the people who sacrificed their lives. Many of them died. Many of them got their hands, feet chopped off. Many of them were bankrupt. They took their ships. They closed their businesses down. Abolitionist work was extremely perilous. But there were people who believed it was the right thing to do. So that's how y'all get on the plantation. Now, Mr. Lundy has told you there is a woman on the plantation who's willing to escape. And he could say, oh, she's about this height. He would probably call me stout. And he could say, well, you know, she's about 70, but she's very feisty. She'd be willing to run. So you know all this information about me. And once you're on the plantation, he tells you what to look for. So you know the woman is about this tall. She's stout. She's in her 70s. But I'm over here working with a whole bunch of other women. How you going to know it's me? You're not going to come and ask me. And I'm certainly not going to go, hey, psst, psst, pick me, pick me, pick me. Not going to do that either. Mr. Lundy was so brilliant, he worked out a couple of schemes. But I want you to remember, anything I tell you, most of it came from enslaved people themselves. I represent Rebecca, who was a tinner, meaning that she made tin cups, she made clips to hold the draperies up. What she would do is she would take pieces of metal and attach it to her scarf. And what she did was she would take the metal, now they called them ear hangings. She would take pieces of the metal and make an ear hanging out of it, and she would attach the scarf so that when she walked, she clanked. Now you know it's me. And now little bit by little bit, I tell you how you can help me get on a ship, preferably because I want to go to Philadelphia. Thank you so much. But just a minute, where does he get his information from? Who tells him stuff to tell me? He's a Quaker, and he is working with other Quakers, but how does he know what ship is coming into the port of Washington, what ship is owned by an abolitionist, where the ship is going, how long it's going to be there, what are they coming to Washington for, and if they smoke the ship? Smoking the ship was taking burlap, setting it on fire. You extinguish the fire, and then you would stick it in nooks and crannies in the ship, and if somebody is hiding on your ship, you're going to hear, now you know somebody's on your ship. So you needed to know that information as well. But who tells him that information? Very close. Girl, if this were a free T-shirt day, you would get a free T-shirt. Very close. Very close. Blackjacks. Blackjacks were men that piloted these ships all up and down the East Coast. Many of them were free, but many of them were enslaved. And they would go from port to port picking up all kinds of information, and they would just bring the information into the port of Washington and share it with those that needed it to be shared with. And someone asked me, well, if he goes to Philadelphia where he can be a free man, well, 99, 44, 100% free. I got that from an old Average Soap commercial. I don't know what that equation means. Why would he come back to Washington? Maybe he's not ready to run. Maybe he's afraid. Maybe he has family members and he's not ready to sever those ties. But that doesn't mean he's not going to help Mama, Grandmama, Billy Bob, and Pookie get the freedom. But he would pass on all kinds of information to Mr. Lundy, and Mr. Lundy would pass it on to you, and then you would pass it on to me. They could give you very good information. They could say, now, tell her, when she's been on the ship a few days, and she starts to smell spices, she's in the port of Baltimore. Tell her that. Why would I want to know that? Baltimore's in slave state, Maryland. I ain't trying to get to Maryland. I ain't trying to jump out the frying pan into the fire. So why would I need that information? What he wants you to do is tell me the whole part of it. Because in 1828, 1832, there were two spice mills right there on the port of Baltimore. One was the Phoenix Spice Mill, and one was the Monumental Spice Mill. Y'all got some in y'all house that McCormick makes today, but McCormick's weren't around back then. And when you came into the port of Baltimore, you started smelling spices. When you smelled them the very strongest, you were at the port of Baltimore. But what does that have to do with me if I'm trying to get to Philadelphia? The rest of that communication is, when she smells spices the strongest in 2 sunups, she will be in Philadelphia. So that would be very, very encouraging to me. But this is your first line of communication. Blackjacks, watermen, Black River pilots, they're the one that gleaned all the information and would share them with abolitionists. The abolitionists would share it with you, but you'd be carefully vetted. You'd be carefully vetted. They would watch you, because a lot of people that signed up to be abolitionists weren't true abolitionists. They would compromise an enslaved person's freedom and sell them right back into slavery. And so you had to have godly wisdom to know who you were dealing with, how and when. But that is when enslaved people's creativity kicked in. They could use any of these things that you see up here to be able to communicate a message, and you wouldn't even know what you were listening to. Let's do Strutting Through the Alley. My sister Libby taught me this song when I was 4 years old. I used to jump rope to it. I used to skip to it. I never knew it was a slave code song until I started researching Washington's Underground Railroad about 22 years ago. And when I found out, I almost fell out. But my grandmother always told me about the songs that would sing and the double meanings behind them. And so this was just one song I sung as a child, and it was coming from Aunt Fanny on Elmwood Plantation. We all knew about Aunt Fanny. You know, when it comes to Underground Railroad history, they try to say that our stories are not true, the oral stories, and some of them aren't. But you've got to carefully corroborate with those stories with other sources. So people in my neighborhood, everybody knew about Aunt Fanny. She was enslaved on Elmwood Plantation. But it wasn't until the 44th Massachusetts during the siege of Washington took over Elmwood Plantation, which became Fort Ceres and became a Union headquarters. And there's one man, he wrote for the Boston newspaper. His name was Xenius Haynes. And he talked about Aunt Fanny being on that plantation. So now all of a sudden, Aunt Fanny is credible. But we all knew those stories about Aunt Fanny. But even before we can tell you these stories, we got to make sure we can collaborate them with other things. So this is one of the stories that came from Elmwood Plantation. Every kid in my neighborhood knew him. My grandparents knew him. It was this little song about strutting through the alley. Strutting through the alley? So here, we'll set it up for you. Milton and I represent free blacks. We'd be on the wharf in Washington. The wharf was a 3-mile stretch of the Pamlico Tar River. And you would have at least 300 people out there on any given day. You'd have maybe 3 or 4 very large seaworthy vessels. People would be out, think outdoor food market. They'd be out there selling food and produce and fish. And so it's 300 people out there singing. Somebody's gonna sing. I'm sorry, it's 300 people out there. Somebody's gonna sing. So it doesn't look unusual if we take a break from our work to sing a little song, but the people over there in the pine woods that know what we talking about, they know what we telling them. So the song goes like this. You ready? Strutting through the alley, 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 strutting through the alley all night long. This the way you buzzer bee, buzzer bee, buzzer bee. This the way you buzzer bee all night long. Jump back, Sally, Sally, Sally. Y'all heard that one? Back, y'all heard that one going along. Strutting through the alley, 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 strutting through the alley all night long. This the way you buzzer bee, buzzer bee, buzzer bee. This the way you buzzer bee all night long. Jump back, Sally, Sally, Sally. Jump back, Sally, all night long. Strutting through the alley, alley, alley. Strutting through the alley all night long. This the way you buzzer bee, buzzer bee, buzzer bee. This the way you buzzer bee all night long. Jump back, Sally, Sally, Sally. Jump back, Sally, all night long. And with that, we would just go back to work. So all y'all heard was 2 people singing. But if you're in on the code, you know exactly what we're telling you to do about getting your freedom. Everything. How many of y'all said y'all heard that song before? Here's what we're telling the people over here hiding in the pine woods. We started the song by saying strutting. A strut is a proud, high look. It means hold your head up and don't look afraid, but be very discerning. That's why you saw us turning our heads. Hold your head up, pay attention to everything going on around you, but do not look afraid. What would happen if we acted like this? So your instructions are hold your head up, be very discerning, and do not look afraid. And then it said, strutting through the alley, 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 strutting through the alley all night long. What part of the 24 hours are we talking about? What's the alley?
Off the main street.
Close. We actually told you. What's the alley?
The wharf.
Say it again.
Is it the wharf?
It's close. You are very close. She said the wharf.
It's the river.
It's the river. Remember I said the Pamlico Tar River was known as an alley of freedom? We're telling you you're leaving from the river. And then we did the part, this the way you buzzer bee, buzzer bee, buzzer bee. This the way you buzzer bee all night long. What insect do you know buzzes? Get busy as a bee because we're getting ready to get up out of here. So whatever you need to do, do it quickly because we're getting ready to leave. And then we said, jump back, Sally, Sally, Sally. Who's Sally? Milt, we'd be in Canada by now. Who's Sally? Say it again. Sally is the name of the ship you're going to get on. Yeah, absolutely. We'll have to bring T-shirts next time. Sally is the name of the ship you can get on. Remember I told you there's 3 large ocean going? We're telling you the name of the... How many times did we sing the song? I know y'all were fascinated with our singing. Y'all were in a daze, right?
I thought it was 3 times.
In how many days are we leaving?
3 days.
So if your, what's the day? Monday. So if your first day is Monday when you hear the song, what is your second day? What is your third day? Now put your clothes together. We're leaving from the say it again. The river at
Night.
on a boat named the
Sally.
what day of the week?
Juneteenth.
Hey, all right. First Juneteenth. All right, free T-shirt for you. But again, they would sing these songs And people think they just singing them songs, but they were communicating messages. And the one my grandmother sang the most, and she would laugh her head off about this. Yes, ma'am.
I just got to tell you, I was born in Harlem, and I heard that in Harlem.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we were in Louisiana a couple of years ago, and we were talking about it. And one lady said, well, we sang it down here too, but we just said, this the way, Zoodio, Zoodio, Zoodio. So people took those songs with them.
Right, yeah.
But my grandmother used to sing this one, and she said the enslaved people would be rolling in the floor when they would be singing this. And the slave owner would just think they had embraced Christianity, and by embracing Christianity, they're going to be docile, and they're not going to rebel, especially after Turner. But let me tell you something, a lot of them folks knew about Jesus Christ when they came here, because the first church was in Africa. So a lot of people knew about Christ when they came. But they could sing songs like, give me that old time religion, give me that old time religion, give me that old time religion, that's good enough. Y'all heard that one? Give me that old time religion, give me that old time religion, give me that old time religion, it's good enough for me. What they were really talking about could be translated. Tell me what time are we leaving? Tell me what time are we leaving? Tell me what time are we leaving? That's good enough for me. Because that meant they were gleaning information. So every song had a purpose to it. Every song had a purpose. And so we grew up hearing these songs being sung. We grew up with all these stories. And when we put the research to them, they were absolutely true. We want to tell you real quickly, I'm going to point something out. Okay, let's do a nursery rhyme real quick. How many, we go in schools and say, y'all know what nursery rhymes are? And the kids go, is that like Netflix? And I go, no. So let's do Old Mother Hubbard. Y'all know that one? Ready? Old Mother Hubbard went to the cupboard to get a poor doggy a bone, and when she got there, the cupboard was bare, and so the poor doggy had none. What would that mean to a freedom seeker? The woman ain't got food to feed a dog or what? George and William Hubbard were abolitionists in Ashtabula, Ohio. He actually was a soldier, I believe, a colonel or something in the Revolutionary War at one point. And what they would do is they would hide freedom seekers on their farm until they could get them to freedom. At one time, they had 17 enslaved people hid on their farms, and what they would do, because now you're in Ashtabula, you are free, but you just didn't walk out there as a free person, you still needed help. And a lot of them from Ashtabula, they still were trying to get further north. So what they would do was they had 17 enslaved people hid on their farm, and what they would do, they would say, now, Mr. Mark, Brother Mark, we're going to send Milton to your house. He is an excellent farmer. He can do lots of things. He can horseshoes, whatever you need him to do. He'll be with you for a while, and when you get ready to leave, you're going to give him a change of clothes and some money. And then they would say, what is your name?
Cardell.
They say, Sister Cardell, we're going to send Leesa to your farm. We know you got 19 kids. Now, what she going to do? Now, she can help you with them kids. Okay, how about 15? Would you take 13? Okay, she got a whole bunch of kids. And wait. All right, but they would send me to her farm to help her with that whole bunch of kids. And I can sew, and I can knit, and I can crochet. I can make things that she can take to the market and sell. But when it's time for me to leave, you're going to give me a change of clothing and a little bit of money. So they had these 17 enslaved people on their farm, and somebody tipped them off it was going to be a raid. Because somebody was planning a raid to get the enslaved people and sell them right back into freedom. But God is so good. Somebody tipped the Hubbards off, and by the time the raid happened, they couldn't find nobody. Nobody. And so what she would do, she would go in the town of Ashtabula and say a nursery rhyme, and that nursery rhyme is over 200, maybe 250 years old, was not written for enslaved people. But they could use a nursery rhyme as a code. And so when she said, old Mother Hubbard went to the cupboard to get a poor doggy a bone, and when she got there, the cupboard was bare, and so the poor doggy had none. Translated, don't bring nobody else here because we can't help them. And being that they were Quakers, I used to work in a Quaker school, and a Quaker service is a whole lot different from what most of us are used to. It's very quiet. There's no preacher, there's no choir. Nobody gets up unless they feel like they're inspired by the Lord to do something, at least at the Philadelphia Meeting House where I used to work with children. So it said in Ohio, she got up one Sunday morning and she said the poem, "Old Mother Hubbard went to the cupboard to get a poor doggy a bone. And when she got there, the cupboard was bare, and so the poor doggy had none." Now, if you were in the Wednesday night sewing circle, you knew what that meant. That meant that some women that were abolitionists, they wouldn't get together and make clothing for the free, the formerly enslaved. Because your slave clothing would give you away. Enslaved people wore a certain kind of clothing. It was made out of Kinsey cloth in Washington, not kente, Kinsey cloth. All the stores sold it. And your clothing identified you as an enslaved person. But when the sewing circle got together, they would make clothes like free blacks wore. So when she said that nursery rhyme, she was talking about Mother Hubbards. Mother Hubbards are dresses. The collar is up to here, the sleeves are down to here, and pretty much the length of my skirt. Mother Hubbards are dresses. So when she was using it as a way to let them know we gotta make clothing for our new friends who are seeking their freedom. So we could use a nursery rhyme, we could use any things on these tables. We do need quickly, Mike, how much time I got left?
Plenty.
Okay, we need a volunteer. We need a gentleman first. Gentleman? There he is. There go Farmer Bob. Farmer Bob, come on down here. Yeah, you right here. What's your first name?
Ander.
This is Farmer Ander. Farmer Ander, he is a abolitionist. He will be working with us today. He has been working with Mr. Lundy about 8 months. He's been carefully vetted, and he will be helping us today. Now, Farmer Ander, all you have to do, y'all know what these are? Can you just give a few of those to people that are sitting there while Milton and I wait for you to give us a code?
What are you doing?
I know. They're black-eyed peas. Move, run. He would be a farmer on the wharf. I told you, when you think wharf, think big outdoor food markets. They sold all kind of produce out there. Farmer Anders is working with us today to give us a code to let us know if it's safe to go near a ship that we've been told we can get passage on. But he can't go, "Hey, yo, come on over here." Can't do that. So he has to do something that's going to be very, very, you're looking at it and you wouldn't even know what it meant. He would have other people working with him, and he would be giving out black-eyed peas so that we could see him. This code worked exactly twice in Washington. And the code was, there are too many people watching. And if you didn't have a whole lot of people to help you, you drop them on the ground. We would know from Mr. Lundy the exact time you would be out there so that we can see you signal to us. He would drop them on the ground, we would see them, and we would not approach the dock because there are too many eyes watching. It worked for 2 days. It worked for 2 days. Now, can you come down and help us, please? I think you were next. And your first name?
Carla.
This is abolitionist Carla. She's been working with Mr. Lundy for 8 months. This is her first time helping us. So you don't have to be nervous. All you have to do is, I'll get you to hold these for me. Now, she's going to be on the wharf. Now, we got to do this on a sunny day because even though the Presbyterian Church is 1 block away from the wharf, we're going to take you with us when we leave. We need you in Washington. She would be on the wharf, and she's going to signal to us. And the Presbyterian Church is a block from the wharf, and the sexton will go there and ring the bell every hour to let you know what time it was. Anytime from 1 to 2, in between that, you're on your own, but at 1 hour, he ring the bell. But if he sleeps late or he just can't get there in time, that bell is not going to ring at a certain time. So we have to use the sun. And you will be told to stay out there until the sun does not cast a shadow. That is roughly between 12 and 12:20. At that point, when you start seeing a shadow being formed, you leave. And all you have to do is hold that basket of flowers. That's all you have to do. Okay, sun's not casting a shadow. We're coming out of the pine woods, which would be right across the street from the wharf. I know. We would immediately leave the area. Now, did she say, all she's doing is, y'all know what these are, right? But she's giving us a very important piece of information. This information came from an formerly enslaved man named Cavoy, C-A-V-O-Y. He was taken from Beaufort County and sold down the river to the Sunflower County, to Robert Beverly's plantation in Sunflower County, on the Sunflower River in Mississippi. He's the one that came up with this one. This is what he used to gain this freedom. And so you see that big brown spot? It's called an I. It means the exact same thing as this. That is why we took off running. He is said to have used it in Sunflower River in Mississippi, got back to Beaufort County, told everybody about it. I think they tried it 1 or 2 times in the Washington, and then because you can't use it more than 1 or 2 times. Somebody's going to figure it out or somebody's going to tell. So that's why it's so many of these codes. We just picked a few of our favorite. Now, let me ask you something. Does she look suspicious with a basket of sunflowers? On that wharf, they sold all kinds of produce, all kinds of flowers that they would make tea and medicine out. You can eat every part of that plant, every part of it. Have you ever had toasted sunflower seeds? You can toast them into a peanut butter-like substance. You can toast the seeds into flour and make bread. You can take the seeds, put them in a wet paper towel, sprout them like bean sprouts. And y'all know about sunflower oil, right? You can take the yellow petals and make tea. You can take the green leaves and make tea. And at the end of the growing season, roughly about Thanksgiving, when the vegetation is dying off, pull those stalks up out of the ground, cut the roots off, let them dry for 2 weeks. You can grind them into coffee or tea. You can eat every part of this plant. And so she's just innocently standing there. And again, sun starts to cast a shadow, you leave. But that's the time that we're supposed to be waiting for a signal from you. And so they could use sunflowers. Enslaved people had these things growing on the plantation. They were readily available during the Middle Passage. All kinds of seeds and nuts and grains were on the ship with them. Black-eyed peas, Benny seeds, okra, the things that they enjoy eating even to this day. They were on the ship. That way, when they got here, they could plant them and continue to eat some of the foods that was indigenous to them. And so they would have a ready source of food. So a lot of these were grown on Washington plantations because, again, you can use them for food or medicine. So, but now, stay in here a minute, now you get to pick somebody. And try to get somebody that's looking like, please don't call me, please don't call me.
In the green shirt, glasses.
Yeah. And what is your first name? Charlotte? Charlotte? This is Abolitionist Charlotte. She will be helping us today. Yes, please, because I want them to see the difference. Oh, we're going to tell y'all about the Washington with us. So. We're coming out of the pine woods going toward the ship. Now, we ain't looking at y'all. Y'all just... Yeah.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Beautiful flowers. Thank you. I like them guys.
Yes, Lord.
Wow.
Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. What was our reaction to Abolitionist Charlotte? Absolutely. We were very happy to see her. She had a good message for us. They would use brown-eyed Susan. Some people call them black-eyed Susans. And the simple reason for this is, well, I got to tell you the inside joke first. Every state has a state flower. The state flower of North Carolina is the dogwood. The state flower of Maryland is the black-eyed or brown-eyed Susan. So they chose the brown-eyed Susan because it was kind of an inside joke against the state of Maryland. Like once you got through Maryland and you're going north, you were almost free. You were pretty much free. But Maryland was a slave state. They could use the okra flower, which is yellow with the brown center, but they preferred the brown-eyed Susan because it was kind of like an inside joke. So we were happy to see her because the eye is smaller, and that would indicate not that many people are watching. It was never a perfect day, but it would indicate not that many people are watching. That is why we were so happy to see you. And if they could not get the brown-eyed Susan, they would use the okra flower, and many times they would use these. But that smaller brown spot usually indicate there are not that many people watching. Washington had 4 slave markets, 2 were on the river, 1 was on Main Street, and the Beaufort County Courthouse. So you needed somebody to tell you how to be able to safely move about and share information with you, and they could do it with something as simple as a flower. Y'all take a bow. Y'all were wonderful. Thank you. Now I'm ready to get on the ship. We need a ship captain. Captain Mark, it is so nice for you to volunteer to be the ship captain. Thank you so much. Come on down, Captain Mark. Captain Mark, again, he's an abolitionist. He's been working with us for a very long time. He is a wonderful man. And I need to get on his ship. He has secured me passage on the ship. He doesn't smoke the ship. He has been diligent about paying attention to every single thing he needs to pay attention to. And he feels like it's a pretty safe day for me to get on the ship. Now, Captain Mark, you're gonna need a couple of people to help you too.
I need a couple of people to help me.
Mm-hmm. And again, try to get somebody that's looking at you like that blue lady with that shirt on, like she's looking like, please don't call me over there.
The blue lady with the shirt on?
The lady with the blue shirt?
This one?
Would you like to help?
Come on up.
All right. And your first name, please?
I'm sorry.
Your first name?
Luli.
Abolitionist Luli. Now you get to pick somebody. You get to pick somebody.
Who am I gonna pick?
Okay, all right. This is one of my favorite stories about how they communicated a message using a nursery rhyme. Captain Mark is gonna let us get on his ship, but he has 2 abolitionists to help him. And the abolitionists are responsible for telling us something. We're hiding in the pine woods, and they are responsible for communicating a message to us to let us know to start moving toward Captain Mark's ship. So all y'all gotta do is sing Ring Around the Rosie. Now, don't worry if you can't sing. We just told you we can't sing. But these wonderful people who are soon gonna audition for America's Got Talent, they will help you, all right. All right, so we just need you to start singing that song. You ready? 1, 2, 3. Ring around the rosy, pocket full of posies, ashes, ashes, we all fall down. Now remember, he's working with Captain Mark. So when y'all sing that song, Captain Mark is now ready to signal to the people in the pine woods, but he's going to do it in a very unique way. And we did not bring what we used, Captain Mark, because I don't think the church would appreciate us getting stuff all over their floor.
Right,
All right. But what Captain Mark would do, when he heard that song, he would just throw up a handful of ashes. Does he look suspicious? Absolutely not. And especially in hot, humid weather, flies, gnats, and mosquitoes were a big problem on those ships. And they would often throw ashes up to make them dissipate. They would come right back. They would come right back. But when y'all sing that song, he's going to use those scattered ashes as a symbol to let us know to start moving toward the ship. It does not look unusual. And so if we hear that song, we know that we can start making our way to the ship. But wait, hold it. Somebody talked. I think it's that guy right there with that little gadget. I think they saying, what they call it now, a cell phone? He got some kind of, I think he's an infiltrator. But anyway, somebody has told Captain Mark, don't do it. Don't do it. It's too perilous. Do not help anybody today. Don't help nobody today. Or maybe Captain Mark got up that morning and went, I don't know, I don't feel right. I ain't helping nobody today. Now y'all got to tell us not to come over there. So Camp Mark, we need you to do this. And y'all turn and look at him. Now Camp Mark, you're gonna hold up 2 fingers. He's indicating to you, we need you to sing the second verse of that song. Ring Around the Rosie has other verses. We traditionally stop at the first one.
No idea either.
Okay, but look, just do like this. Watermelon.
Okay.
And they think y'all singing, all right? The second verse of that song, how it was used is this. Cows in the cornfield eating up the buttercups, ashes, ashes, we all fall down. Cows in the cornfields are freedom seekers. No, I'm sorry, cows in the cornfield are the bounty hunters, the slave patrol, anybody, the sheriff, they are the cows in the cornfields. Guess who the buttercups are? So they would use that as a warning song. So nursery rhymes could be used. Any kind of song could be used to convey a message. I need to tell you now why I'm dressed this way. Thank you so much. Y'all take a bow. Now I need to tell you why I'm dressed this way really quickly. We have a enslaved runaway ad. I believe it is from 1848, 1838. It's about a woman named Peg. And when Peg runs away, her slave ad specifically says Peg has on 3 petticoats. Think thin skirts or slips. Now that was confusing because your idea was to say near as much water as possible so that if dogs picked up your scent, you could immediately get in water. If you got all those clothes on, they act as an impediment. You ever get caught in the rain or something? You know how heavy your clothes are when you take them off? Nobody could really figure out why Peg got on an outer garment and 3 petticoats. This is why Peg had on an outer garment, such as this one, and 3 petticoats. Because her petticoats would signal what kind of help she needed. And so if Peg were singing and she wants you to see the petticoats that she wants to show you, it would have been something like this, per my grandmother. Swing down, chariot, stop and let me ride. Swing down, chariot, stop and let me ride. Help me, Lord, help me, Lord, help me, Lord. I need a home on the other side. She would want you to see this one. And this would signal that she needed a ride on the stagecoach. Washington had 2 stagecoach lines, and one of them was owned by Mr. Henry Wisnell, who also owned a slave market on Main Street. He got his most entrusted slave named Rhoda May to drive the stagecoach from Washington to New Bern or Plymouth, and mainly it was to pick up mail. He did pick up passengers, but mainly it was to pick up mail. And he made a little compartment under that stagecoach where he could help someone hide to get him to New Bern. Why would I want to go to New Bern? Because Washington is under surveillance. So I want to try to leave from the port of New Bern or the port of Plymouth. So this was to signal she needed help on a stagecoach. This one, if she showed you more of this than the other 2, she needs help getting to one of the overland routes that we talked about. So she's letting you know you need to help her get to one of those free black overland routes outside of the city. And I'm gonna let y'all figure this one out. Absolutely. So you could use clothing as a signal. And again, we only found Peg using it. But that was total genius. Now I'm ready to get on the ship, and Captain Mark is waiting for me to get on the ship. But I'm going to need a helper. Let's see. Would you please help me? Please, would you help me? Please help me. And your first name? Tammy? This is abolitionist Tammy. I'm ready to get on Captain Mark's ship. Milton, I'm going to send for you when I get to freedom.
Okay.
I'll send for you.
For you.
Okay, all right.
Be careful.
Okay, all right. Now, abolitionist Tammy, I just need you to tell Mama I'm going to send for her and Billy Bob and Pookie when I get free. You do that for me?
Yes.
You go with him and get my 5 children. I got 5, and then there's 6 more by him. Okay. Captain Mark, he has to trust me. Oops, they didn't have plastic back then, okay. Captain Mark has to be able to trust me, just like I gotta trust him. So he's gonna want to inspect what I have in my bag. So I got some magnolia leaves.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna boil them and dye my hair. So if they try to describe me and say I got gray hair, I don't have to have gray hair. And I got some pecans and an acorn.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna boil the shells and dye my hair. And I have a garlic. I'll just put them right here.
Okay.
I'm gonna take the garlic and rub all over my hair so the dogs can't pick up my scent. And I got a,
An onion.
y'all eat an onion like you eat an apple? I ain't gonna do that either. I break it open, rub it in my hair. Dogs can't pick up my scent. And if I have to, the reason I got the scarf on, I'm real smart, y'all. I can make a weapon out of it or using a larger stone. And I've got, I got your money, sir. I got your money. And I got a potato. You see that top eye?
Mm-hmm.
That's to remind you, you keep the top eye open now. You got to pay attention.
Mm-hmm.
So they would always give him a potato with a little sprout on it, the meaning keep the top eye open, meaning he's got to be careful. Oh, and I got some corn on the cob.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to eat the cob, but I'm going to save the husk and the cob. I burn it in fire and make an ash like a gray baby powder, put it all over me. Dogs can't smell my scent. But, oh, and Captain Mark, I got an egg for you, sir. You want to just put that right here?
Mm-hmm.
I got an egg for you, sir. And if you just hold your hand out like that, I just need you to hold that egg just like that. Got it?
Okay.
Y'all might want to move back. But don't worry, don't worry, don't worry. If he get egg all over you, they're gonna take you to Walmart in belts and get you a whole new outfit. So don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. Well, Captain Mark, what I need you to do, I want you to take in one hand and as hard as you can. Look inside, there's a piece of paper. And if you open that piece of paper, it's gonna tell you exactly where I'm going. And by the way, that was a real eggshell.
Yeah.
That was a real eggshell.
How'd you get the paper in there?
You know what? I used to say ancient Chinese secret until I was in school one day and I went, somebody said, how did you get in there? I said, ancient Chinese secret, and I saw this little Asian girl looking at me like, really? So I stopped saying that. What they would do is take a hole, put a hole in the top and the bottom, blow it into a bowl so they could use it later, dry the egg, put the message inside the egg, and put candle wax on the tip to seal it so you couldn't see where the hole was. And then they would give that to someone to be able, now where am I going?
Philadelphia.
Now, he has to be paid. He is a nice man, but he wants to be paid. Where is the money? I have it on me. I know every kid in school go, my grandmama keep her money right here. Every kid in school. My grandmama. Where's the money? I have to pay Captain Mark. Where's the money?
Sewn into your clothes?
No.
Underneath your headband?
That's a good one, but what you heard jingling was the coin. But come down, I'll let you look though, just so. But what you heard jingling was these coins. I'll take it loose so you can see. Oh, she think now that's a good guess. She thinks it's in my hair. That is really good guessing. She thinks it's in my hair. That's a good guess. So where is it? Where is it? When I tell you enslaved people were brilliant, they were brilliant. Many of them were mathematicians, scientists, doctors, brick makers, engineers, you name it. They were brilliant when they came here. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And God gave them a wisdom to this day that don't go nowhere, that still confounds me. You notice I only took 2 portions of my hair out? And what I did was do this to distract you. Yeah, absolutely right. It is in my hair. And this is the money for Captain Mark. Captain Mark, now, this would be about $17 today, but that's the money. And this is going to tell you where I'm going. And I want you to know I wrote these things myself. We always encourage children in school, don't you believe, and I'm going to tell y'all too, don't you believe everything you hear, don't you believe everything you read. You have got to research and find out if these things are so. Because history has not been fair in telling a lot of things. And there's an old African proverb that says, until the lion can talk, you will always hear the hunter's version of what happened. Until the lion writes the book, you're going to always read the book the hunter wrote. So you have to research, you have to read. You hear these old stories, don't pass them on until you got the proof to pass them on, because they look at Underground Railroad history as nothing but myths. And some of them are, but there's so much truth in what you're being told. They were brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And I'm going to teach you how to write. Yes. Enslaved people could read and write. They could read and write. They wouldn't tell you they would under the penalty of losing their life. Would you share these with anybody that got a hand up? Who wants to try this? They had hush harbor schools. And what they would do, somebody that could read and write would go in the middle of the woods, and they would teach people how to read the Bible. They would teach them how to read and write. And what they would do, they'd go in the middle of the woods, somebody would be over there, somebody's back there, somebody's over here, somebody's over here. And if they gave a certain sound, you put everything away and get back to whatever you were doing. I want to show y'all one simple way people learn to write. One simple way, and it's my favorite way they learn to read and write. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to turn y'all all into 4 to 9-year-olds. Boys and girls. It's not a high production day on the plantation, and so I get to keep all y'all in my cabin during the day, because girls, I'm going to teach y'all how to tatter and how to clean a house, and boys, I'm going to teach y'all how to make tabby. And tabby is taking oyster shells, pounding them down, putting sand and lime and water to make a concrete-like substance, so when you go in the big house, you know how to put a fireplace together. So what I'm supposed to be doing is teaching you how to do chores. So girls, when you go to the big house, you know how to clean up, you know how to do all that kind of stuff. And boys, I'm going to teach y'all how to make tabby. Now here's how this is going to work. I'm going to teach you how to write a word today. Now if I spell A-P-P-L-E, I just spelled, I could get killed for that. I could be killed for teaching you to read and write. Many people, I have so many narratives where their loved ones were killed for learning to read and write or teaching someone how to read and write. And we always encourage young people, you don't know how precious education is. Learn all you can, because people died trying to read and write. So here's how this is going to happen. I got y'all in my cabin. These little slates I keep, it's just a piece of wood that I blackened on both sides, and I keep them under my cook pot in the kitchen. And your piece of chalk, y'all know what white clay is? In Washington, we got white clay, orange clay, yellow clay. Your writing utensil is just a piece of white clay. But now here's how we're going to do this. If we hear a warning sound, because Milton is working on the outside of the cabin, he's keeping sentry. And if he produces a certain sound that sounds like this, I'm going to snatch these tablets away from you, put them back under my cook pot. You're going to take that piece of chalk, put it in your mouth, and swallow it. Why y'all looking at me funny? If you ever took Imodium, y'all just taking glorified chalk. And back in my day, people used to take Argo starch and eat it. Y'all know about the Argo starch? So if you hear the cuckoo sound, I snatch this, you put it in your mouth, you eat it. Girls, you pick your tattering back, and boys, you pick up going back to your making tabby. Now, I can't spell out the word. Well, I think I'm gonna have to show them one of them though. I can't spell out the word, but I'm gonna use an imagery that you would know. Now, when I was able to work in the field, my job was chopping cotton from sun up to sundown. And chopping cotton is chopping the weeds away from the cotton plant so it doesn't take the energy from the cotton plant, and that cotton plant can go big and healthy and strong. That was my job from sun up to sundown. So when I left in the morning, this is a hoe. I have a hard time explaining to 8th graders. I said, y'all ain't got the word right. This is farm equipment. So when I left my house in the morning, I've got my hoe, and I've got a little bag with cornmeal, flour, salt, and lard in it. That's my fast food. And we tell the kids there's no Chipotle's, there's no Burger King. So my fast food has got to be something I can fix fast. So this is what I do all day long till it's time for me to eat. When it's time for me to eat, I'm going to find a water source, a creek, stream, tributary. Maybe it rained last night, there's a clean puddle of water. I'm going to take that water, clean the blade of my hoe. I'm going to take some of that clean water and mix it up in my bag with the cornmeal, the salt, the lard, and the flour. I'm going to get some dried leaves, dried moss, dried vegetation. I'm going to rub 2 stones or 2 sticks together, make myself a fire. I'm going to take that little patty, place it on the blade of the hoe. I hold it over the fire. It browns on one side. I turn it over. My fast food is ready. A hoe cake is cooked on a hoe. A pancake is cooked in a pan. I need you to know this image. Now, since I'm always singing in my cabin, your instructions are, whatever I put up here, that's what you do. I would ask you, what hand do you use to pump water? That lets me know your dominant hand. I would ask you, what hand do you use to pump water? And then I would say, that is the hand you're going to write with. And whatever I put up here, that is what you put on your paper, your slate. And because I'm always singing, I just start singing. Go down the road and come back again. Go down the road and come back again. Now we need that hoe cake. Hoe cake in the water. Hoe cake in the water. It had a stick on it. Hoe cake in the water. Now we need some water. Hoe cake in the water. Next to the snake and the pony, I saw it. Hoe cake in the water. Next to the snake and the pony, I saw it. Little pony fish hook. Hoe cake in the water. Next to the snake and the pony, I saw it. Little pony fish hook. Jesus died on the cross for your sins and mine. Hoe cake, little pony. What word do you have? Did I call any letter? No. I'm using images, and the children remember the images. And then I would quietly come to every single one of them and tell them what the letter, W, say it, W, A, say it, A. We'd come to every one of them quietly and tell them what every letter was and what this word is. Now they go home and teach the qualified adults in the cabins what they learned from me, and only qualified adults. There were qualified adults. And you only told them anything because slave owners and overseers would ply children with gingerbread, a piece of taffy, and the little kids tell everything they know. I used to be a teacher, and on Monday morning I could tell you everything happened in your house. The little kids come to school and tell everything. So the thing was, it was called qualified adults, and you only told them. You heard that old saying, children should be seen and not heard? It came from slavery days. You had to be careful who you told. So again, only the qualified adults would know this. Now we're working with images. This, I could say horse, but phonetically pony just sounds better. And this is little pony because it doesn't have the long neck. What was your W? Does anybody remember? What about your A? Your S was a? Oh, Milton, they're good. Your H was a pony. Your I was? I saw it. Your N was? Your G was a fish hook. Your T was a? Your O was a? And your N was a? When I tell you God has made people brilliant, He has made us brilliant. And you could really teach any letter with the, Milton's name starts with an M. If I wanted to teach you how to write an M, I would just sing it. Go up the mountain, come down again. Go up the mountain, come down again. When you're able to write, you can write your own slave pass. I did find a slave pass in Washington, Beaufort County Courthouse. It was $300 at an auction. Y'all, I'm real cheap. I don't spend money for nothing. I downloaded this one for free off the internet. But any slave pass will contain this information. So the one I got from off of the internet, gentleman is the sheriff, the patrollers, anybody looking for a runaway slave. Let the boy. A boy was a black male. He could be 2 months old. He could be 102. He was referred to as a boy. And then they would name the enslaved person. So this is what this slave pass says. Gentlemen, let the boy bear it, pass, and repass from the 30th of June to the 4th of July. That's how long you could be going. You come back July 5th, you could be in a lot of trouble. Tells where you're going, to Columbia, Missouri for this date, 1852, and then the slave owner would sign it. When you could write your own slave pass, and you can keep going, and you can keep going. Free blacks didn't need a pass. They would have to go to the Beaufort County Courthouse, buy a metal tag which had a number on it, a serial number on it, and they wore it on their outer clothing to be seen at all times. Enslaved people had to have a pass. And so when you can write, the world is yours. Why do we do this? We call what we do at the Underground Railroad, it's our mission and it's our ministry. What we want people to understand is that all people have to be treated with dignity and kindness and respect and value of life, because that's how God expects us to live. All of us. And what happened with the Underground Railroad is that people were willing to sacrifice their life and die for me, that I might have a better quality of life. And so what we do at the Underground Railroad, one guy came in and goes, well, where are the whips and the chains? I said, sir, we don't do that here. You can go to any museum and see that. What we want to tell you is how people work together, and we want to tell you the brilliance that enslaved people had. They did not sit on a plantation waiting for somebody to come up and swoop them and take them away. They were meticulously planning, and they put thought into their planning, and above all, they believed in a God who would deliver them. And so even if many of them died not getting deliverance they wanted, they believed in a God who could help them. And so we call it our ministry because we just want the people to know that God's been good to all of us. He's been good to all of us. But when I think about the song from the Negro National Anthem that says, stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod, born in the days when hope unborn had died. Hope unborn, hope won't even born and it died. But yet with a steady beat, have not our weary feet to the place where our fathers cried. And then it says, God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, God who has brought us thus far on the way, God who has by thy might led us into thy light, keep us forever on the path we pray. And then they go on to talk about, we don't need to be drunk with the wine of the world because we'll forget you. He said, Lord, don't let us forget you. Don't let us get drunk with the wine of the world and we forget you. So what does that mean for us? That we've constantly got to be diligent about how we act and how we treat people, because all people have to be treated with God's care, and they have to be treated with respect. We have to. We have to. And so if we can take the legacy of the Underground Railroad and bring it into 2024, if y'all read the news in the morning or watch CNN or whatever you watch, it looks like this world is going stark raving mad. But what we want you to remember during the Holocaust, during the Trail of Tears, and during any form of slavery to anybody, there were good people working behind the scenes, good godly people working behind the scenes to make life better for someone else. So we do this to encourage you to make life better for someone else. If you get a chance to come and see to the Washington Waterfront Underground Railroad, we've got so many things to show you we couldn't even possibly tell you in the time frame. We thank Mr. Mark for inviting us, and to the pastor of the church and everyone involved that invited us here. But we're simply here to remind you that people have to be treated with dignity, kindness, and respect. Thank you so much. Thank you.